Welcome to Constant TV, where legitimacy and consistency rule. Today, we are going to bring to you the history of the Dahomey Kingdom. If this is your first time, please endeavor to subscribe, like, comment, and share our channel. Thank you. Now the story begins. In earlier times, Danhomé was the name given to the fabulous Kingdom of Abomey, and it is by this name that the modern republic is known. The Kingdom of Dahomey was established around 1600 by the Fon people who had recently settled in the area, or as a result of intermarriage between the Adja people and the local Gedevi. The foundational king for Dahomey is often considered to be Houegbadja, 1645 to 1685, who built the Royal Palaces of Abomey and began raiding and taking over towns outside of the Abomey Plateau. Dahomey is a precolonial West African kingdom, located in what is now southern Benin. Founded in the 17th century, Dahomey reached the height of its power and prestige during the heyday of the Atlantic slave trade in the 18th and 19th centuries. In the late 19th century, it was conquered by French troops from Senegal and incorporated into France's West African colonies. Dahomey was the last of the traditional African kingdoms to succumb to European colonization. Unusual in Africa, Dahomey was ruled by a form of absolute monarchy. The king was surrounded by an assemblage of royalty, commoners, and slaves in a rigidly stratified society. Dahomey utilized women in key areas. Each male official in the field had a female counterpart at court who monitored his activities and advised the king. The women soldiers of the Western African Kingdom of Dahomey were known for their fierceness and prowess in combat and for being protectors of the king. In the Dahomeans' Fon language, they were called Minyo, our mothers, or Ahosi, wives of the king. When Europeans first encountered the kingdom's women soldiers, they called them Amazons, after the women warriors of Greek mythology. The origins of Dahomey can be traced back to the Fon people of the interior of the African continent, who banded together in a conglomerate in order to oppose the political authority of the Yoruba people of Oyo. Technically an official subject of the Yoruba of Oyo, the Fon people were forced to pay tribute to their political conquerors and were subjected to cavalry raids made by the Oyo armies in order to supply the slave trade. In order to unite the Fon people in opposition to the Yoruba, leaders who rose to positions of power capitalized on the ability to perform well on the battlefield. With military skill being prized as the ultimate expression of authority, the king of the Fon came to embody uncontested authority, and his will was enforced by the army. King Houegbadja rose to power in roughly 1650 and came to embody the militaristic values that had become embedded among the Fon people. Based in his capital of Abomey, Houegbadja and his successors succeeded in establishing a highly centralized state with a deep-rooted tradition of autocratic centralized government. Economically, Houegbadja and his successors profited mainly from the slave trade and relations with slavers along the Atlantic coast. As they embarked on wars to expand their territory, they began using rifles and other firearms traded with French and Spanish slave traders for young men captured in battle, who fetched a very high price from the European slave merchants. The later expansion of Dahomey towards the coast met with resistance from the Alafin, or ruler, of Oyo, who resented the political and economic rise of their subject. Soon after the march to the sea, the Alafin of Oyo sent cavalry raids to Oyo in 1726, completely defeating the army. Later cavalry invasions in 1728, 1729, and 1730, in which Oyo proved successful, hindered the plans for coastal expansion. In 1902, Dahomey was declared a French colony. In the movement of African decolonization following World War II, Dahomey became an autonomous republic, gaining full independence in 1960. The Republic of Dahomey changed its name to Benin in 1975. About its politics. The king of Dahomey, Ahosu in the Fon language, was the sovereign power of the kingdom. All of the kings claimed to be part of the Aladaksanu dynasty, claiming descent from the royal family in Houegbadja. Much of the succession rules and administrative structures were created early by kings Houegbadja, Kaba, and Houegbadja. Succession through the male members of the line was the norm, with the kingship typically, but not always, going to the oldest son. The king was selected largely through discussion and decision in the meetings of the Great Council, although how this operated was not always clear. The Great Council brought together a host of different dignitaries from throughout the kingdom annually to meet at the annual customs of Dahomey. Discussions would be lengthy and include members, both men and women, from throughout the kingdom. At the end of the discussions, the king would declare the consensus of the group. Key positions in the king's court included the Maigan, prime minister, also head executioner, the Mayu, finance minister, the Yovagan, the Tokpo, minister of agriculture, the Agon, general of the army, the Kapojito, queen mother, and later the Chacha, viceroy, of Wida. Each of these cabinet positions, which, with the exception of the Kapojito, were headed by men, had a female counterpart to complement them. Meaning, women are very important in the kingdom. The Mayu was similarly a key administrative officer who managed the palaces and the affairs of the royal family, economic matters, and the areas to the south of Houegbadja, making the position key to contact with Europeans. About its military. The military of the Kingdom of Dahomey was divided into two units, the right and the left. The right was controlled by the Maigan and the left was controlled by the Mayu. At least by the time of Houegbadja, the kingdom had developed a standing army that remained encamped wherever the king was. Soldiers in the army were recruited as young as 7 or 8 years old, initially serving as shield carriers for regular soldiers. After years of apprenticeship and military experience, they were allowed to join the army as regular soldiers. To motivate the soldiers, each soldier received bonuses paid in cowrie shells for each enemy they killed or captured in battle. This combination of lifelong military experience and monetary incentives resulted in a cohesive, well-disciplined military. The army consisted of 15,000 personnel which was divided into right, left, center and reserve, and in each of these was further divided into companies and platoons, 38. In addition to being well-trained, the Dahomey army under Houegbadja was also very well armed. The Dahomey army favored imported European weapons as opposed to traditional weapons. For example, they used European flintlock muskets in long-range combat and imported steel swords and cutlasses in close combat. The Dahomey army also possessed 25 cannons. By the late 19th century, Dahomey had a large arsenal of weapons. These included the Chassepot Drays, Mauser, Snyder Enfield, Wonzel, Wendell, Peabody Action, Winchester, Spencer, Albini, Robert Jones Carbine, French Musketoon 1882, and the Mitrailleuse Refi 1867. Along with firearms, Dahomey employed mortars. Another eye-catching in Dahomey military system is Dahomey women warriors. Women soldiers of the Western African Kingdom of Dahomey known for their fierceness and prowess in combat and for being protectors of the king. In the Dahomeans' Fon language, they were called Minyo, our mothers, or Ahosi, wives of the king. When Europeans first encountered the kingdom's women soldiers, they called them Amazons, after the women warriors of Greek mythology. About its economy. The domestic economy largely focused on agriculture and crafts for local consumption. Until the development of palm oil, very little agricultural or craft goods were traded outside of the kingdom. Markets served a key role in the kingdom and were organized around a rotating cycle of 4 days with a different market each day. The market type for the day was religiously sanctioned. Agriculture work was largely decentralized and done by most families. With the expansion of the kingdom, agricultural plantations began to be a common agricultural method in the kingdom. Craft work was largely dominated by a formal guild system. The kingdom has a complex tax system, in which officials who represented the king, the Tokpa, gathered data from each village regarding their harvest for tax. Taxes were imposed on craft workers including blacksmiths, weavers, and woodcutters, for example. Kangaroo courts could be held at any place such as the market or on roads, presided over by officials recognized by the central government. Such courts could extract some form of tax from the litigants before judging the case. Taxes were derived even from prostitutes during the annual customs. Slave trade was an important economic factor of Dahomey Kingdom. Both domestic slavery and the Atlantic slave trade were important to the economy of the kingdom. Men, women, and children captured by Dahomey in wars and slave raids were sold to European slave traders in exchange for various goods such as rifles, gunpowder, textiles, cowrie shells, and alcohol. Dahomey used magical rituals for slave trading. Prior to being sold to Europeans, slaves were forced to march in circles around the Tree of Forgetfulness, so they would lose memories of their culture, family, and homeland. The purpose of this ritual was to prevent the spirits of deceased slaves from returning and seeking revenge against the royalty of Dahomey. About its religion. The Kingdom of Dahomey shared many religious rituals with surrounding populations. It also developed unique ceremonies, beliefs, and religious stories. These included royal ancestor worship and West African vodun. The annual customs of Dahomey, Zwetanu or Hwetanu in Fon, involved multiple elaborate components, and some aspects may have been added in the 19th century. In general, the celebration involved distribution of gifts, human sacrifice, military parades, and political councils. Its main religious aspect was to offer thanks and gain the approval for ancestors of the royal lineage. Religious practice organized different priesthoods and shrines for each different god and each different pantheon, sky, earth, or thunder. Women made up a significant amount of the priest class, and the chief priest was always a descendant of Dekodanu.